Hey, everybody, I'm Jason Mefford, and I'm here with Brad Miller. And today we're going to talk about we
Swans.
don't
Oh,
we don't know yet, right? So here we
yeah.
go. We just kind of get on and we talk, but we thought we'd do this
Mhm.
episode a little different than we've done some other ones. So Brad, you want to explain kind of why and what the impetus is behind this episode that we don't quite know where it's going yet?
Yeah. So we're talking about swans today. Not six
Swans.
swans of swimming. But um, so I know we've talked about this before, and maybe we'll do an episode at some point here on animal medicine, more in depth. But every morning I pick an animal card, and today, and you can actually see it kind of back here for those of you who are looking this on YouTube. If you're just listening to it, you're just gonna have to imagine it. But today's card back here is the swan. And the swan is all about grace and allowing and not trying to force things. And so I was, working to come up with some topics for today's episode. Today, when I was in the shower this morning, and the only thing that kept coming back to me was this idea of the swan, and the fact that sometimes it's okay not to know what we're going to do. Kind of like with this episode, we don't know where this is going to head. Um, but I'm just allowing myself the grace to let it take me where it does, and I'm sure that something relevant, I don't know, I wouldn't say wise or anything like that, but something relevant to this podcast will come out here today. So that kind of led us into.
Yeah, because I think it's interesting. The last 2 or 3 years of my life, I've really been more allowing, right, than I ever have been. Because I mean, I'm a type A personality. I'm a go, 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 get it done, get the to-do list. You give me a project, I'll get it done, sort of thing. But I've really had to start allowing more.
Mhm.
And I think the words allowing and then grace together are interesting. And can't remember who I was talking to, but they're like, I hate the word grace, right? Because a lot of times I think people use it maybe in a way that might be a little different, or sometimes it's a little self-defeatist. And I think we kind of talked about that before too, where it's like grace doesn't mean like giving up. It doesn't mean just kind of going with the flow. Well, it doesn't it doesn't, I think, right? As
Yeah.
we've talked about before, but to me, another great word for grace is kind of self-compassion or self-love
Mhm.
of, not being hard on ourselves and realizing that it's okay
Mhm.
because most of the time we're not given all the answers that we want right away. So just like again, this episode is a real life example of this, right? Most of the time when we sit down to record, there's some topics that pop in that are like, oh, that's what we need to talk about today, right?
Mhm.
Um, and today it's just more about kind of allowing and grace and self-compassion, and we see where it goes.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were talking beforehand before we hit record, about um your occupation, your profession, and
Mhm.
how that is something that you have kind of pushed off or hid from, or I mean, I don't know how you might want to say it, but that's actually something it sounds like that you're starting to kind of surrender to or have allow yourself grace around the topic of the fact that you are a CPA. You're not
Yeah.
just some guy with a funny hat and glasses. You are actually a CPA as well.
Yeah, because well, maybe I'll just kind of share the story a little bit as we'll see how we tie this into kind of the allowing and the grace, right? With it is, yeah, I've been a CPA since 1998. Okay, that's a long time, right?
Mhm.
Um, but when I got my CPA, and this is one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, you don't have to be a CPA to do taxes. But most people know CPAs as somebody who does tax work, right? And in fact, when you're in when you're in accounting school, in university, usually you kind of decide there's one of two ways that you typically go if you are uh, going to become a CPA or an accountant, right? Is you can go into kind of public accounting and audit financial statements, and you have to have a CPA to do that, right? So that's kind of a state law, if you will, that you have to have that in order to issue those opinions for financial statements. Or a lot of people would choose to go into tax, right, and do taxes maybe through a public accounting firm or on their own. Or then other people, with an accounting degree, might just work as an accountant or a bookkeeper in a company, right? And so, I decided I was going to go the public accounting route. I was going to work for a public firm and I wanted to do financial statement audits. So I got my CPA, started working for, at the time, it was the largest accounting firm in the world, was really happy and proud with what I was doing and everything was going great. And then just like everything, life happens, and maybe we'll talk more about that and fill in more of the blanks that in the last 25 years at some point, maybe not today. Um, and so, in our firm too, it was like there were the tax people and then there were the audit people, right? And so we kind of had this like
Team
rivalry,
tax, team audit. Yeah.
rivalry, kind of in the office anyway, right? And so I never saw myself doing taxes or wanting to do taxes, right? Because in some ways it's kind of a compliancy, just didn't seem as fun to me as doing audits and working with companies in other ways.
I
I
was
know
gonna say
that
I'm not
sounds
gonna go
weird for
there. Yeah.
everybody, because especially like Brad's laughing like those both suck. Those are both boring. What are you talking about? But anyway, so why this is relevant is it was probably August of 22, and maybe even a little bit before then. I've had certain businesses. I was an executive in companies. I've had my own businesses since 2012. Um, and have kind of been soul searching a little bit about what I want to do when I grow up, or do I want
Never
to
grow
keep
up,
doing
Jason. Never grow
never
up.
grow up, never grow up, I'm a Toys R Us kid, da, 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 da,
Exactly.
right? But of how I want to maybe change how I make my money, right? Because my life has changed. I'm doing other things that are work that don't necessarily earn money, but I still have to have money to live, right?
Mhm.
And so, some of the things that I've been doing are not as fun anymore, right? Which obviously leads to the soul searching, but again, it's like, but I've been doing this for, 30 years, right? How do you switch 30 years in? Well, you just do, right?
Right.
And so back in probably about August of 22, I started kind of getting these feelings around uh, tax and tax planning and helping people, financially with some of the other skills that I have. Because part of me was sitting there thinking, well, why did I go to school for what I went to school for if that's not really what I want to do, right? And so these nudges kept coming in, kept coming in, kept coming in, kept coming in. Throughout the whole time. And in fact, until we kind of launched this podcast, which has probably been about a year ago now,
Mhm.
I hadn't really let anybody know publicly that I was a CPA. And then, in the show notes, we have, Brad Miller, a
Mhm.
lawyer, and Jason Mefford, a recovering CPA. And when that went out, a bunch of people reached out and they're like, I didn't know you were a CPA, right? And I've hid it for so long too, because the first question when people find out that you're a CPA, they're like, oh, can you do my taxes? Or
Right.
they want tax advice help. And it's like I know enough to be dangerous because I had
Mhm.
to learn it as part of my education. But like I said, it was never something that I really wanted to get into or do
Mhm.
per se. But again, it's been getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger to the point where I had three different people within 2 days ask me specific things about taxes and wanted me to help file their taxes for them. And I'm like, cannot make this up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for the last few months, I've been exploring that more, and again, I don't know where it's going to lead, right? Because I don't have all of the answers, but I'm allowing and I'm having, some grace for myself. So,
Mm-hmm.
what does that look like? I don't know where it's going, but I'm doing little things every day or every week, right? To experiment with it a little bit. Like I said, it was back in December. I actually had some, well, actually, even going back to October, because I helped them file their taxes. They had an extension and needed some help to do it. And it's like, okay, well, I'll sit down and show you how to do it. We'll get it all, lined up, and you can put the information in TurboTax or whatever it was and file it. But she was kind of, didn't know what to do. And it was really causing her a lot of stress and anxiety. And so for me, then I kind of stood up into my power and said, well, this is something I'm good at. If I can help alleviate some of her anxiety and fear around this, well, then that's a good thing, right? And not see it as something of, oh, it's a boring compliance thing, blah, 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 to form this, form that, blah, 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 feel like the character from Ghostbusters, right? I just rewatched that again. Was it Rick Moranis where he's the accountant, the gatekeeper, uh,
Mm-hmm.
because that's kind of the stereotype along with it, right? Um, so anyway, we did that. December, had some more in-depth conversations with some friends of mine, some issues that they were dealing with their businesses. So I started the process. I got my numbers from the IRS, so I'm all, approved by them, just changing tax software, all this kind of just taking little steps, again, not knowing what it's going to look like, what it's going to be, but taking some little steps along the way, right? And realizing that I'm not an expert in it. I don't know necessarily what I'm doing, but if every day, if I'm doing a little something and then new things keep opening up to me, then I'm on the right path, right? And in fact, so you had the swan medicine card today.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting out on my porch this morning, um, and I was thinking about some of this stuff because I had a call yesterday with a client, and so I was thinking about something related to this, and all of a sudden a hawk flies by. Oh, isn't that interesting? And again, when the hawks kind of come through my neighborhood, they're not flying high like hawks usually do. No, I get a hawk that comes in and like goes down over the road about 4 feet off the road, right in front of me. So that happened earlier this morning. Got up, made my coffee, was doing stuff, was sitting outside on the back porch again, thinking about this client and some of the stuff that might happen. All of a sudden, hawk goes by again the other way. Now, what does that mean to me? I'm probably on the right path. Hawk is messenger. I don't know exactly what it means, but I felt good when he flew by. Um, and I don't have to know all the answers. I just have to keep kind of plodding along every day. And so again, some people might be saying, well, but that's all about your business, Jason. What does that have to do with your spirituality? Well, hopefully if you've been listening, you can you can pick up on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it comes with little intuition and not voices, but knowings and things that I've been having that have been gaining in intensity, situations that I find myself into, leaning into and doing little things along the way, and the path keeps unfolding in front of me slowly. So, So that's my little story
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Um,
No, I like again. I think it goes back to the idea of grace and kind of the idea of self love, because you could have been like, you know what? Nope, not doing the tax stuff. Like I'm still sticking that in the basket, like hiding it away, whatever, like that. But you kept on getting these urges, these nudges, these little signs and things, and you're like, all right, fine. I'm just gonna go and dip my toe out and take a step and see where things go.
mhm.
You know what? It doesn't work. That's awesome. If it does, okay, we'll go another step and we'll see where that leads. And it's trusting yourself enough. It's believing in the message that you're getting. Um, because you could have been like, nope, that hawk is just some rodents running around there is going for it. Doesn't mean anything. You know. Um, because it'd be easy just to shrug off something like that, or some of these people asking you to talk about taxes. Well, obviously there's something going on right now in the world, and tax is just what they're thinking of, nothing to do with me, right? And you could have thrown all that stuff off, but instead you're like, well, all right, I'm going to lean into this a little bit, see where it takes me, see what happens with it. Um, you know, but the key is not getting so on that you're worried about, well, if I do this wrong now, I'm seeing these
Mhm.
signs, so now I'm going to do this wrong. What happens if I'm supposed to be doing this instead? Or,
Well,
could you take it, a different way? Like, like you said, you take one step and you see where it goes. Okay. And then you go for the next. And, um,
yeah, and there's little things, along the way that can kind of creep in, like you said, that anybody listening probably has had some of these thoughts too, like, oh, I'm not good enough. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have any experience. Well, but is there any evidence out there that proves that wrong, that I shouldn't even be thinking that? Right. And it's like, well, I've been filing my own taxes and my business's taxes for how many years? I've been doing it
mhm,
for family trusts and other things. I know the CPA that my dad has used for a long time, and I haven't liked her for a long time, not from a person perspective, but just didn't feel that she was very competent. And yet, this is a person who's been doing it for 40 years, right? But she would, each year, I'd prepare everything for my dad, I'd hand it off to her, and she would have stupid ass questions that's like, do you not even remember? We talked about that 3 years ago and things have changed. It's like she was asking me for some documents again. And I'm like, do you not remember that we changed how we're doing this 2 years ago? My dad's been her client for probably 15 years.
mhm,
Right. And so, as I looked at those kind of examples, I looked at the examples of how much stress and anxiety is on some of my friends, trying to deal with this stuff where, they ask me in a half an hour or an hour later, they're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. I didn't realize I could do that. Or I was getting wrapped all around the axle for this. And it's like,
mhm,
so maybe it is, a way of thinking of things differently too, right?
mhm,
Is instead of me thinking about tax work like I did when I was in my early 20s and I was making fun of the tax guys in the office, is instead see it as a way to help people uh, reduce that stress and anxiety in their life, right? I mean, I'm sure it's the same way for you, Brad, as an attorney. It's like you have certain skill sets, you have certain education, and so when people come to you and ask you for things, or you do work for them, you can probably do in 5 hours for them what they would try to figure out by learning and Google searching and everything for a week or two. You could do
mhm,
for them in 5 hours. And so it's not just that you're providing whatever it is legally to make money, but you're also providing so much more to those people.
mhm.
Um, that I think sometimes we don't think about, and probably everybody listening should even think about that is, however you make your money or whatever you do for a living, can you see it in a different way of how you're actually helping people?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if like the same thing, like I said with with legal work. There's stuff that I know very easy to do. There's stuff where I'm like, you just go file a form online and it's, 5 minutes is done. But people don't know that. And it's realizing that, we went to school for, 4 years of undergrad. And then, for lawyers, we did another 3 years of law school and took bar exams. And we have continuing education requirements and, all these things that we do. And we often forget the things that we find easy or that we feel or maybe insignificant can really impact someone positively. You know, somebody, filing a tax form for somebody who they've been stressing over for weeks. It may take you 10 minutes to, put something together real quick, but the relief that they get is huge. Or I say, hey, file this form online. They would have been going around in circles for weeks trying to figure out what they had to do and stuff and had no idea. And for me, yeah, it's easy. I understand it because I've done it, but to really realize just how valuable that might be, um, you know, because we get kind of experts as professionals, we kind of get experts in what we do, and like you said, we minimize the impact of it. We think it goes so much because it's so easy for us. A, it must be so easy for everybody, and
Yeah.
B, it must not have much value. And both of those are wrong.
Well, and I think it's interesting because the friend that I helped back in October, because again, her CPA had filed an extension, right? Taxes are usually due in April, but they filed an extension, so she didn't actually have to file them until October. But as the deadline was coming up, she was getting more and more stressed about it. She knew she didn't want to use the CPA that she'd used before. But, me sitting down with her for an hour and just talking to her about a few things, showing her how she could, the equivalent of that 5-minute form. Look, this is how you use the
Mhm.
tax softwares. Here's how you put in the information. I helped her put in some of the stuff, and it's like, okay, you've got these 5 things left that you need to find and do. And I like, okay, so we talked for the hour. If you need more help, let me know, right?
Mhm.
And I never heard back from her. And then, a week or so goes by and it's past the filing, and she sends me a message and she says, "Thank you so much for your help. It was the easiest tax year I've ever had." And she's used an accountant the whole time, right? And so, I felt good about being able to help her. And the interesting thing too is she said, I felt so empowered,
Mhm.
right? So a little side benefit that I never even thought about was that it helped her feel more empowered and confident about herself that she can do things like that.
Mhm.
Which again, it's like, wasn't necessarily about helping her file her taxes. It was about helping her feel more calm and relaxed
Mhm.
and powerful in her own self.
Yeah.
And so when you think about it that way, it's not really about filing taxes. That's not what we're doing, right? And
Mhm.
and again, to tie back into the spiritual, everything that we're doing something else spiritually and in the ethers. And so we might think, Brad and I might think that we're sitting here, he in his office, I in my office, right? Arizona, Ohio, we're, country across from each other, but we think we're sitting here recording a podcast, but we're not really just recording a podcast. And I think that's, part of the spiritual tie-in is you
Mhm.
can start to see even what seem to be ordinary, mundane activities like going to the grocery store. Well, it's a lot more than just going to the grocery store. Right.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me, one of the, I think his name's Ed Robinson that I knew is a professional speaker too, that I met through the National Speakers Association. One of his talks, he talks about having a job, a career, or a calling,
Mhm.
right? So a job is, just something somebody goes to for the 40 hours a week, and they punch in and they punch out and they don't think too much about it. They do the job that they have to do. They get paid, they go home. That's it. Right. And a lot of people have jobs. There's some people that have careers, and those are people that see their job as kind of developing and moving them into the next level and making, getting the promotion and moving companies and making more money. And so they see the job not as an end to itself, but in helping them get to where they want to go, right? And then there's people who have a calling, which is yes, they have a job, they're doing something to make money, but it's not about themselves anymore. It's about the calling that they have and in serving other people, right? And which again you can kind of understand, but the interesting point that he raised in that speech was the example he gave was of a house cleaner in a
Mm,
hotel, housekeeper in a hotel, who she didn't have a job, right? Most of the people that were there would clock in, clock out, did the minimum that they needed to do. But he had this interaction with a particular housekeeper at a hotel where he was staying at, where she would do things like, he had stacks of paper all over his hotel floor. Well, when she was cleaning his room, she saw that. She went and got a table, brought a table into his room, and organized his papers on the table for him. Now, it was nothing that she was required to do from her job, but she wanted to serve Ed and help him and saw her job as a calling instead of just as a job. Right. And so
mhm,
I think all of us can do the same thing. And I think the minute that you start thinking that way, you start to allow the spiritual to really come into it because now you're serving and helping a fellow human being
mhm,
in their evolution and helping them be in the right emotional state. You're listening to that inspiration that comes in that tells you, hey, I need to pick up the phone and call Brad because something's going on with Brad. Right. And it was the same thing, last night there were some things that we were going through here, and my partner, one of the friends that she never hears from except for, Christmas or something like that, sent her a text. I was thinking about you and praying for you, and I'll explain more later, but I just felt like you needed it. Right. It's those kinds of things that as we start to be more open and more receptive to it, and we start to see our job, we start to see going to the grocery store, any interactions that we have with other humans, with other, you know, plants, animals, anything else, as more than just what it seems on the 3D level, that's when you're walking on the spiritual path. So,
yeah.
time for Jason to shut up now. Brad, it's your turn.
No, no, no. Yeah, no. We've talked about this. My role here is to come up with the ideas and to prompt you, and to let things come from you. So I'm satisfying fulfilling my side of the bar of the thing here. But no, I mean I've heard that story. I don't know from you or someone before, and I think as professionals, particularly, a lot of us we face this. I mean, because there are some professionals out there. I'll just use lawyers as an example. There's a lot of lawyers out there who go out because what they do is a job. Um, I think there's probably the majority of them go because they see it as a career, because they see it, hey, this is a way to make a good living. Yes, there's a component of being able to help other people out there, but maybe they would like the prestige of it. They like the way it makes them feel to be a lawyer, to have that identity as a lawyer, what it means for them. How other people see them as a lawyer. Um, the idea that we're going to move up, we're going to move up the ranks, we're going to become partner, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of this
Mm-hmm.
idea of the career development. I think a lot of lawyers see career as what they are doing. Their career is being a lawyer. And then there are some that see it as a calling. And you can tell those lawyers, those are the ones who are passionate about the people they're serving,
Mm-hmm.
that are willing to forego some of the glamour, some of the money, some of the other things, in order to really focus on serving their clients. Whether that's helping their clients get compensation or the idea of clients getting justice. Somehow they are doing what they're doing because of something beyond what the lawyer gets from doing it.
Well, and
And
I
I
think
guess that's
that's
kind of what I see the calling aspect of it is. It's just those lawyers who, this is more to them
Mhm.
than being a lawyer.
Well, and I think that's when you really cross from just the 3D into more of the spiritual experience,
Right.
is when you can start to see that what you're doing, yeah, it affects you, it benefits you, but what you're really doing is benefiting everyone, everything, and you
Mm-hmm.
see it as something bigger. Um, you're doing things not necessarily because of the money, but because of something you're passionate about,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or because, you want to help people,
Right.
right? It's the spiritual life, and don't get me wrong, money is helpful, right? I mean, it helps to have money because that's
Sure.
just resources that can help you do things. So I'm not saying don't make money and don't try to make money,
Right.
but is making money your end goal,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's kind of like where the career people go, is they're just concerned about making money. Right. And I get people every so often that reach out to me for career help. And that's why, I was, somebody wasn't sure which path they wanted to go. And I'm like, well, what's your main purpose? And they're like, making money. I said, what do you mean? Well, I just want something that makes me good money. Well, you're kind of missing the whole boat there, Bub, at that point, because there's lots of people that get into professions that they hate just because of the money. So, but can we think about every interaction that we're having, everything we're doing, and think about it from a higher spiritual conscious level, life starts to change for you, right? The interactions that you have in the grocery store with people is different. The interactions that you have with your friends and family and partners are different, right? When you start to see things and you start to operate kind of from that place. And I know, we talked before we were recording, even the holidays. You notice a difference in your holidays this year
Mm-hmm.
than previous years. And I think, again, I mean, I told you my opinion is a lot of that's because of how you have changed, and who you are now, and that's rubbing off on all these other people because you're seeing and you're doing things for a bigger reason, um, and it shines through.
I mean, that's why we do this podcast. I mean, it's one of the reasons behind it is hopefully this rubs off on others.
Mhm.
You know, so
Yeah, we're not making money doing this, folks. So we're doing it because we're passionate about it and we want to help and we want to share and help people along the way. So
yeah. Well, on that, I think we've done a good job of making up stuff for this episode here. The episode that we didn't really know we are going to talk about from the beginning. Um, so hopefully, you listen and you got something out of this that is beneficial regarding, kind of your callings, your passions, giving yourself grace, self love, whatever it might be. Hopefully, I'm sure there's a message. If you're listening to this, there's a message in there for you somewhere. Hopefully, you're able to take it to heart.
you just start allowing, right? Just start following the breadcrumbs, that you feel inspired to do, and just see where it goes. Because we never know until we get there. And so yeah, go out and have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you on the next episode.
And maybe we'll have an actual topic then. So we'll see you guys then.
See you.